Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome to episode 263 of the show. Hey, this week we are rejoined by last week's guest, John McBrine. He is back to read a sample chapter from his latest novel, Unsecret Identity. The book came out September last year, and he's working really hard on the second one right now. But yeah, this chapter is fantastic. It is unique and thrilling. It's really gets you into the opening of the book, and not only sets the stage, but it truly piques your interest. So you're in for a treat with that coming up here in just a few minutes. Make sure, if you're interested to find out more about John, you could listen to last week's episode 262, where John and I had a chat. There is a link for that in the show notes, so you don't have to look around for that. Just click down below. And of course, you can also click the links for everything about John, his website, and his books. And once you check this out. Meanwhile, last week I had a really good time at the Art Walk downtown Warrensburg. That was actually pretty successful. Did sell some books, met a lot of really interesting people, and had some nice chats with a few really nice people that came along and talking writing and talking about my books and such. Bandit was again a really big seller, and yeah, that was cool. But at the same time, had some people. I think every one of my books got sold that day. So that's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that. There's something for everyone, and that's a good feeling, to know that I got a little bit of something that no matter your taste, and maybe you'll like it, unless you like nonfiction. I don't have anything there. Sorry. But because of that art walk last week, if you are listening to the show, checking this out for the first time, welcome. Hey, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other episodes. And yeah, if you're checking this out on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you also head over to YouTube and you can see the artwork for each and every episode. That's a good place to follow the show as well. As always, I do appreciate if you want to give me a 5-star rating, smash that button. To let me know, that you're enjoying it. But more than anything, I invite you to follow these authors. There's been so many amazing authors here on the show, and it really means the world to me if you find a book that you really enjoy, and that you go and leave them a review and let them know what you think of their work, and that is the writer's lifeblood, to find out that people are enjoying what they have shed blood and tears for to put onto paper, because I can tell you it's a process. So yeah, anytime you find a book because of the show that you really enjoy, make sure you go and leave a review. And if you feel so inclined, you can add into your review that you heard about this book because of the Sample Chapter Podcast. Otherwise, what was really nice about last week is that also got me really cooking on Bandit 3. Did a few thousand words throughout the weekend and the rest of the week and over the weekend. And then even actually earlier today, I had one of those really great days where, got up, did my workout, came upstairs and got my coffee and breakfast, sat down and punched out 500 words before having to get ready for work. And I call that a great way to start the day. That was good. And I'm looking forward, hopefully, to starting each and every day going forward just like that, because 500 words a day, that adds up pretty quickly. I can have Bandit 3 finished, by the end of September, and that would be good. I would really be happy if I could do that. But, as a listener of the show, you will be the first to find out when it will be ready. Meanwhile, I think that's enough for me. We've been talking about 5 minutes now. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hand the floor over to our guest, John McBrine, and his latest book, Unsecret Identity.
Hi, this is John McBrine, and I'm going to be reading the first chapter of my novel, Unsecret Identity, Eric Icarus, Book 1. Chapter 1, Up. David. Power. David had their attention now. They were a small group of high-ranking uniformed officers and money guys in expensive suits who would ordinarily have better places to be. They were all important, and most notably, they were all there listening to what David had to say. We all crave it, but what is it really? Loyalty, trust, love, influence, blah, blah, boring. No, I mean power. David moved across the wide stage only a few feet above his audience. A middle-aged man, he wore his graying brown hair slicked back and allowed some stubble for a sleek but rough-and-tumble look to impress his potential buyers. His clothes blended with the black curtain, and he positioned all the stage lamps to spotlight him. David was the one speaking, after all. Above him, a sizable sign bearing the words Boxworth Dream and Earring gleamed in the light. That sign, that name, had to be big so they could all see it and know. Is power control? David said into his microphone headset. Yeah, but I think I should rephrase my question to be, what power's power? Dominance? Strength? Maximum magnanimous might? Guess what? They don't mean jack without power. You got power over a big pile of nothing if you can't so much as light a light bulb. But it's not all about wattage and joules, gentlemen and ladies. What fuels your fate? Long ago, I asked myself this very question. Huddled tightly in the large showroom, David could sense the crowd's patience collectively slipping. For many of them, this wasn't the first time they'd heard David speak, and he was fearful that they'd already made up their minds. You need a power source for your force, of course. David proudly smiled as the words left his mouth. Then the air left the room. An older military general in the audience leaned over to a woman in uniform next to him. We could have used a bomb like that in the war, he whispered. The woman's face remained polite, but nodded in approval. David cleared his throat. Without energy, simply put, nothing works. The general leaned in the opposite direction, this time to a slick businessman. If he tries to sell us that Ultra Robo what's it again, I'm not kidding. I'll put on that suit myself and do the cha-cha. The smirking suit coughed into his hand to cover his grin. Why, without power, David said, soldiering on, not even the premier weapon in modern warfare can be utilized. David gestured to his right. Not even... From behind David, heavy, slow thumps quaked the floor, followed by mechanical whirring sounds. The Ultranaut warsuit. The curtain gave way to a hulking suit of armor at least 7 feet tall, walking up the stage. The metal beast towered above David with its bulky, geometrically shaped shoulders. Thick-coated green wires covered its robotic frame, snaking in and out of the rectangular arm and leg casings. The ultimate wearable Vortec, David went on, this near-indestructible suit of armor marries the pinnacle of bionic battlefield weaponry with irreplaceable human ingenuity. Thrusters on the hefty boots complemented a wide, smooth jetpack on its back. Sleek cannons mounted on the gauntlets, and the thick chest plate made for an imposing figure. White paint coated the armor plating with light blue accents in stripes, plates, and other outlining dots. David waved at his creation, bursting with pride. He pointed to the side of the helmet where angular steel sheets with blue lights blinked from tiny apparatuses. The helmet itself was made of thick, transparent glass with a greenish tint. What was perhaps most impressive was that it was fully automated, with no person inside. Right on cue, techno music blared from unseen speakers. The hollow armor's exterior lights flickered and beamed, putting on a small light show. From above, rafter-mounted air machines sprayed mists of theatrical smoke engulfing the Ultranaut suit. A woman in the audience coughed. Ultranaut posed with cannons aimed high, then swiveled to a fighting stance, targeting the crowd. Fear washed over the general's face as he readied for an attack, but instead of bullets, confetti popped out of the cannons in a glistening display. The audience snickered, but the general was not amused. The machine flexed its bionic biceps upward, then downward, and bent one arm to pose while the other pointed to the distance. It broke out into a robot dance, hamming it up. Nervous, David softly clapped. The music cut off. The suit's lights stopped blinking. The armored shell saluted and then stood at attention. The general rolled his eyes. David waited a rehearsed moment for them to awe at his invention's mechanical majesty. It was a moment of silence. Ultranaut is an impressive show of force. David shuffled across the stage in quiet awkwardness, closing the distance between himself and the suit of armor quicker than he had planned. This is your last chance, David, he thought. Time to earn your place in the history books. It is not, however, this morning's focus. No, we are not here today to discuss what is the next wave of battleware such as Ultranaut. While there was little to no motion in front of him, a blur caught his attention from stage left. Squinting under the stage lamps, David spotted a 14-year-old with unkempt brown hair and a drab olive-green short-sleeved shirt worn the day before. The boy scurried along the second-tier promenade, lining the large room. In seconds, he disappeared into a hallway just above the stage lights. Fantastic. Eric is running late, again, and will probably miss his bus, again, David thought. Driving him to school is all I need. I can't keep these people waiting, people I'm lucky that showed up on short notice, let alone see me at all. The assembly's indifference toward Ultranaut was palpable. A guy with a mustache and a pressed suit surfed his phone. Others joined in as little squares lit up in the crowd. But rather, David said, swallowing his pride with a literal gulp. A disheveled man in the front row whacked the side of his bulky smartphone. The screen's light flickered and he let out a frustrated grumble. David recognized the device's defective design. Must be a representative from Slate Technologies, David thought. If it weren't for me, they'd be the laughingstock of the tech world, not for long. We're here to talk about what powers this marvel of the modern age. A single drop of sweat slid down David's well-lit forehead. Imagine a clean energy source that could power an army of Ultranaut warsuits. David looked down at the bored faces of his uninterested audience. Or an entire city. Every head in the audience snapped up, and all eyes locked on David, just as he'd planned. Clean energy had the science world abuzz with possibilities. It was a proverbial gold mine. And not just within our lifetime, David continued. I'm talking about right now, right here and now. The mustache guy in the crowd lowered his phone, letting its screen brighten his face. David couldn't believe he didn't recognize him before. Baron Maddox, he thought, forming a smug grin. The head honcho of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, here to see what his little old former partner has to show. This is too perfect. Clean energy, folks. And where does this clean energy come from? David said. Well, what's cleaner than air? Okay, so I know we have kind of a smog issue here in New St. Cloud City, so not the best example, but the general looked at his wristwatch. Look, I don't know about you, David said, but I can't wait to live in a world where we have the power to rely on ourselves and not some costume jerks calling them superheroes. That got a big sarcastic, oh really, smirk from Baron. David ate up how sweet it was going to be, proving Baron and everyone else wrong. Even in the low light, the audience's sour faces reminded David that he stayed in the minority of loathing the super society. That is to say, what I am proposing is that we take, well, you see, we basically construct the molecules and atoms right from the air. And David closed his eyes for a moment, trying to find the resolve to hold it together. Energy is all around us, David said. But without a way to properly harness this energy, then it's lost to us. Or worse, something tragic could happen. Ultronaut powered down with a boo sound that trailed off into nothingness. The helmet and shoulders sunk, and its lights faded. Breaks my heart every time I see that. He wiped his misty eyes. David had achieved the antithesis of crowd work. The audience stood confused, silent, and a little creeped out. Baron went back to surfing the web again. David's nostrils flared at the disrespect. All words abandoned him, and his thoughts became a garble. Come on, David, he thought. If you don't pull yourself together, you might as well kiss any chance at funding goodbye. What if I told you I have developed a device that can convert the air around us into pure, clean, sustainable energy more powerful than anything that has ever come before? David knew he had to squeeze the trigger and reveal the hook. What if I told you I have that device right here, ready to go now? The curtains retracted, unveiling a massive, translucent, white domed structure with 4 large black metal arms running up the surface, connecting at the center. A grid-like pattern cascaded across the dome's surface. It lit up as it began its activation process, providing additional light so that David could better see the faces of those in the audience. I present to you the Megacore. Bluish-pink light radiated from lengthy tubes that encircled the dome's broad base. A heavy hum set the room abuzz as the dome emitted a soft white light, phasing in and out of dullness. David walked across the stage, pointing at his large invention. Wires and cords surrounded the dome, attached to it like eels bunched together in a bind, coiling around the floor to different bulkheads. Monitors, large and small, displayed data tracking information, forming a wall behind the dome. Workstations lined up across the wall as automated drones zipped around in the air, each emitting light beams fizzling into holographic projections of the dome's status. This amazing feat of technological advancement can sustain massive amounts of energy for months at a time, David said, walking backward across the stage. The synthostasis units are automated and self-repairing, maintaining optimum performance at all times. Metal arms lowered cranes with repair tools and cameras to inspect the generator's functionality. The drones and cranes maneuvered behind the dome with syncretic ease. David smiled a satisfied grin at the dazzling demonstration of cybernetic development. The Ultronaut suit, however, stood dormant. The audience's mouth hung ajar in awe of what they witnessed. A woman rubbed her glasses lenses, seemingly unconvinced she was seeing what was right in front of her. Despite the audience's apparent astonishment, the severe absence of applause cued a tiny heart attack waiting on standby within David's chest. He waited for something, anything, in the form of an audible reaction. Finally, a sound came. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," Baron said, sidestepping by other guests to make his exit into the darkness. It's the V-neck. They hate the V-neck, David thought. He nervously covered his upper chest, partially exposed from his attitudinal attire. David then stormed to center stage. He tried pushing Ultronaut, but the thing weighed a ton. Finally, David stepped in front of the armor and faced his inactive audience. The Megacore absorbs molecules and atoms from the air through the dome's surface filtration matrix. It converts the collected particles and other elements from the environment and transmutes all of them into pure energy. I'm through being humble about it. This is going to change the world. So if I cough on this thing, it'll power up my coffee maker? The old general remarked, snickering to the uniformed woman beside him. I'm sensing you're more of a show-not-tell kind of crowd, David said. So how about a demonstration? That's what you all came here for, right? David whipped out his smartphone from his front pants pocket and hovered his finger over the touchscreen. When I simply tap this button on my command device, I initiate the action sequence, and the megacore will launch the transference process. The power will channel through the generator's engine and expel it throughout this building, turning my headquarters into a brilliant beacon lighting up the city. From below the stage, the audience watched as David inched, centimetered, millimetered his fingertip closer to the lit screen of his mobile device. Like a vacuum, the megacore will absorb enough particles to give you the biggest, best display of next-gen bleeding-edge tech you've ever seen. Get ready. This is going to suck. David's fingerprint gently lowered to the screen like a feather's touch. Boom. Eric. Next time there's a big explosion, I need to remember not to land right on my butt, Eric whispered while creeping up the hallway. He winced as his back pressed against the wall. The shiny plastic mallet in his hand rattled. Eric tightened his grip, quick to steady his only means of defense. Its hollow, piggy bank-like interior carried enough quarters to give it some oomph in case he had to use it, as well as enough noise to attract any unwanted attention from whoever had attacked. Peeking over the guardrail showed him the dim megacore dull from inactivity. It's not a million pieces, Eric thought, but if that's not what caused the mini earthquake we just had, then what or who did? Eric's jaw dropped at the disarray of the first floor. The audience members had gone to whatever hiding spots they must have found, leaving room for colorful figures to occupy the floor. Seeing the Super Society up close felt different than Eric expected. Their unconscious costume bodies strewn about his home made a freaky first impression. Whoa, what are they doing here? He thought, gazing slack-jawed at the KO'd crime fighters. Eric pondered if he had summoned them via some cosmic happenstance. He looked at the novelty hammer in his pale hand, a gold-painted replica of the golden gavel used by Judge Justice, the leader of the original Super Society, the city's greatest protectors of yesteryear. It even said as much on the engraving on the handle. What could take them all out like that? The OG Society would never go down like this. One of the teen heroes stirred in the rubble, silhouetted by the sunlight pouring in. Petite and blonde powerhouse rummaged through where the kitchen used to be. She flipped over the solid steel oven and lifted the fridge with ease. Eric's eyes popped watching the girl's metallic arms do such heavy lifting. A big yellow guy lay motionless near the stage, which Eric took as an excellent sign. The jaundiced behemoth was a mystery, but he looked like a nasty supervillain type. Eric gawked at the massive hole in the rear wall. They crashed right through the building. Damage would be enough to anger his father, David, but expensive equipment flung everywhere would get him raging. Add a superhero smackdown interrupting his big presentation, and Dad should be ready to go nuclear. Brain, Eric said, placing the gavel on the floor with a shaky, unsure hand. His phone displayed the words Brain, Foxworth Remote Artificial Intelligence Network. Awaiting your command, the robotic voice said from his phone speaker, loudly. Eric punched the volume down button. Where's Dad? He said quietly, enunciating each syllable to avoid repeating. Where's everybody else that's not wearing tights? The building's system is operating at 45%, Brain reported. I will require repairs before I can complete your request. Forget it, he said, sighing as he pocketed his phone. Can't risk waking up the yellow dude. Gotta make a move, though. Gotta make sure the coast is clear, David said from below. Eric leaned over the rail to see David poking his head up from the side of the stage. I've already lost so much, David said. I will let some super freaks take my sign, too. The long Boxworth Dreameneering banner sagged in danger of slipping away. The Super Society's crashing entrance loosened the hooks suspending the sign. Gashes, scratches, and frayed edges decorated their green lettering. That's what you're worried about? Are you for real? Eric said under his breath. An old army general popped up from the stairs on the opposite end of the walkway. Thought I saw somebody up here, the old-timer whispered. Better make yourself scarce, boy. No sense in waiting to get your eggs scrambled. Hey, Eric hissed. You're an Army guy. Shouldn't you be calling, the Army? Don't need to. The Super Society is already here, the general said before slinking down the stairs. Guttural grunts came from below. Pass on Ultranaut, scoff at the megacore, David grumbled. I can't let those vultures think David Boxworth is dead to the science world. Eric darted his eyes to see David climbing the access ladder attached to a tall girder. Dad, Eric whisper yelled. A few broken rafter-mounted lamps darkened the area, but the remaining lights were still difficult to bear. Squinting, David outstretched his arm, but the support beam stood just out of reach. Powerhouse, an unmistakable voice shouted. Startled, Eric looked over his shoulder to see Truther on the first floor getting to his knees. Though his cowl was black with a thick metallic golden T placed over where his eyes and nose would be, as well as extending over his upper lip, Truther's face and chiseled chin made him instantly recognizable. Truther's wavy blonde hair danced in the breeze blowing in from the large hole in the wall. Eric's fandom of the first Super Society peaked when he was around 9, but he couldn't ignore the grand spectacle. He's right there, Judge Justice's former sidekick sidebar, all grown up as Truther, the adult leader of the new team, Eric thought as a whirlwind of nostalgia jostled in his mind. Wow, this would be so much more awesome if I wasn't 100% sure I'm going to pee myself. Powerhouse ran up to Truther. You're okay, she squealed. I thought you were, I was looking for, but... Go-Go, Extra, and Supercutter down, Truther said. Check on your teammates, hero. A litany of garbled swear words caught Eric's ear. David was at eye level with him, 10 feet away. I can't fail the business again, David muttered. Eric's father leaned his body over to extend his reach. David's fingertips grazed the banner's border. Dad, what are you doing? It's just a sign. That banner is our family's flag. It stays up no matter what. David's hand on the ladder slipped. Eric's heart stopped. David steadied himself, and Eric could breathe again. Hang tight, Dad. One of the superheroes will save you. Eric waved to the floor below, but the oblivious heroes did not notice. Your rampage ends here, Truther announced as he approached the unmoving yellow giant. It's over, Cybertooth. He reached into his utility belt and whipped out a pair of silver shackles. Good thing you still have feet and that these things are expendable and expandable. Cybertooth spun to face Truther, revealing more of his bizarre features. Below his nose, a flat metal plate covered his mouth. A vertical line down the center of his steel mouthguard, making for an evil robo-beaver appearance. Cybertooth coughed out a glitchy snarl as if regurgitating static. His metal tooth plate flipped up. A small metal orb launched from his mouth. Truther raised his arm's T-gauntlet and fired a pulse of energy at the speeding ball. The spherical bomb detonated on the impact of the laser blast, erupting into a white wave of energy. Whoosh! Eric clamped his hands onto the guardrail, rioting out the vibrational force. David held onto the buckling ladder for dear life. The girder shrieked with tension. The support beams bent under pressure. The long strut above the stage shook, wiggling the lamps mounted to it. The wavering signs slipped away as the hooks behind it followed suit. One by one, they popped free. The big banner fell and was about to belong to the air when David stretched his body, grabbing hold of the edge. Dad, no! Eric screamed. Unable to avoid his fate, David leaped from the teetering ladder, surrendering to the fall. Eric felt his body lift. His limbs felt hollow. Weightless, he knew just to push. Instinct carried him over the guardrail. He grabbed the collar of David's V-neck, then gripped his armpits. He hoisted his father up, rescuing him from being a heap of broken bones on the stage below. Eric's feet dangled, floating. Eric's hands trembled like they were going to wriggle off his wrists. He struggled to lift David, who outweighed him by nearly 100 pounds. They hovered with Eric's arms now wrapped around David's waist. David dropped the sign, staring at his son as if for the first time. "I've got you, Dad," Eric said softly. David's breathing grew rapid and heavy. His face tightened as if fighting to hide any emotion. A moment of unbearable silence passed between them. JC. JC couldn't believe what she was seeing. She blinked like crazy under the canary yellow domes over her eyes. Steadying herself on a toppled-over workbench, she raised her head, straightening her blue powerhouse mask. She saw Eric Boxworth, a slight boy of her age, short and lacking muscles, carrying his father, David, as they descended. Eric's body was semi-svelte if someone could be such a way. In all honesty, he had a sort of skinny fat thing going on. Eric sucked wind as they landed. Eric looked petrified, but David just stared at him. Finally, David said something, but JC couldn't hear whatever it was that unnerved Eric. He hurried off past the massive dome structure and disappeared out of sight. JC looked around, but everyone lay still, knocked out or slow to recover. Even Cybertooth appeared out cold. JC returned her attention to the stage to see David walking away in a huff. He may not have looked amazed, but JC tingled in sheer awe of what she had seen David's son do. JC hushed herself as if not wanting to wake up the rest of the world, but she couldn't hold in her wonderment. He can fly.
And that was John McBrine reading a sample chapter from his latest book, Unsecret Identity. The book is available right now. Click that link in the show notes for more about John and all of his books. We also have links in there for our TeePublic store and more. And hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out next week when I will be back with a new author, a new book, and a brand new sample chapter. Take care, everybody. See you soon.